The next citywide election is around the corner, with the primary September 12 and the election on November 7. Voters will have an opportunity to select the mayor and all 5 members of the Board of Aldermen. So, how and where can you cast a vote? And what are the deadlines you need to know? You'll want your voice to be heard, and in this edition of City Issues, you'll find out what you need to know. Mayor Randy McClement and I are here with Phyllis Hane, legislative clerk for the city, to explain the who, what, when, where, and how of the city's elections.
And the general election will be on November 7th. But this year, we're very excited for the City Issues, a series of discussions with Mayor Randy McClement. There are questions from the candidates and questions from the voters. Candidates can have
Welcome, Phyllis.
Thank you.
We're here to talk about the upcoming elections. Are you feeling lots of pressure from candidates, or how does it work? Tell us.
Well, we're getting ready. The election days will be, the primary date will be September 12th, and the general election will be on November 7th. But this year, we're very excited. For the first time, we will have early voting as well. Early voting before the primary will take place on Friday and Saturday, August 25th and 26th. On Friday, it's from 12 to 8, and on Saturday from 12 to 6. And then again, at time for the general, we'll have early voting on October 27th and 28th, which is again a Friday and Saturday, the same times, 12 to 8 on Friday, 12 to 6 on Saturday. And that will take place at the Frederick Senior Center at 1440 Tawney Avenue, the same place that early voting has been held for several years in the state and national elections.
Which is great. So people have that consistency and they know where to go. So one of the things that we are happy to have you here, and to let the citizens know, elections just don't kind of happen the day before a primary or the day before the general election. We plan a year out to start making these things happen. Along the way, as you said, new things are discussed as to the voting process and locations. So can you give the residents just a sort of a quick synopsis of what happens when we say, okay, next year's an election year, what do we need to start thinking about?
Well, early on, last year already, we reviewed our charter and code sections that apply to elections and made some small changes there, and we did incorporate, the possibility for early voting. And then the Board of Aldermen passed a resolution to authorize the early voting for this election. And then we start publicizing for candidates. We get the forms out there. Candidates had until July 3rd to file, and we started working. We do work closely with the Frederick County Board of Elections, and they assist us a lot with process, with equipment, getting all that in place. All the equipment has to be lined up. That equipment will have to be programmed. Even though it's a touch screen, it doesn't look like a computer anymore. It is all programmed so the computer can get the results out quickly on election night. Ballots have to be printed. There are a lot of pieces that go into it. The Board of Supervisors of Elections is increasingly involved. As we get closer and closer in the day-to-day planning and just the logistics, we will be using the same system. Voters will be familiar with the equipment and the system. It's what was used. The city used it in 2013, and it was used in the 2016 presidential election. It's a paper ballot where you'll see a list of names, and you will fill in the little oval next to your choice, and then take it to a scanner and just feed it into the scanner, and it's very simple. There, of course, the mayor and all 5 seats on the Board of Aldermen will be open in this election, so you may choose 1 for mayor and up to 5 for the Board of Aldermen. You don't have to choose 5, but up to 5.
And speaking of, the Board of Supervisor of Elections, while through the 3 years leading up to the year of the election, they really, there's not a lot they do. They do a lot of the planning and stuff like that. But the day of the elections, them and a group of volunteers at all these polls have some important work to do. So why don't you tell them a little bit about what they do?
Yes, every polling place is staffed by election judges. There are 2 chief judges, and then there are unit judges for anyone who needs assistance with the ballot or the scanner. There are the check-in judges that's who you see when you first come in. You give them your name and they look it up and check that that you voted. And then we'll have a ballot judge that will hand out the paper ballots so that everyone gets the correct ballot. And every polling place is staffed with several judges, the 2 chief judges especially, and really all the judges, we have a balance. There must be 1 Democrat and 1 Republican in the chief judges, which is why there always have to be 2. I don't know, a lot of people are aware of that much thought goes into staffing the polling places. And then the Board of Supervisors on Election Day make the rounds of all the polling places. They're out there throughout the day, and they're all available by cell phone. So if any questions come up, sometimes, if there's a question about a voter, any sort of glitch in the system, and they have to approve overriding that or, look into something, they're available all day from about 6 in the morning until all the votes are counted. The polls close at 8, and then after all the votes are counted and results are listed, so till probably at least 10 at night.
And everybody, one of those volunteers at each one of the polling places are stuck in that room, in that facility all day long.
All day.
So this is an opportunity to thank all of those volunteers. Yes. Because they spend one full day, an important thing, and we appreciate their help, but they are not allowed to leave from the time they start to the time they end.
And it is a long day because polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. They're in there early, of course, to get all set up so they're ready when those doors open, because there are usually some people like to be there right when they open. There's usually a line, I think, at most places first thing. And of course afterwards everything has to be tabulated and packed up and delivered back to we will be working with the Frederick County Board of Elections this year, and it'll go back there and they will tally the results and send them back to City Hall where we will announce them.
How do election judges and the volunteers get selected?
Anyone can apply to be an election judge. There is an application on the city website. And then we do mail out applications to people who have served as judges in the past. And then it's pretty much a first come, first serve. To a certain extent, the chief judges are selected on experience. And then every judge has to go through, besides working on election day, they have to attend a training where they're trained on the equipment and the process and also city election law, so they can answer questions.
And the Board of Supervisor of Elections, or the group that oversees, how are they selected?
They are appointed by the mayor.
So you had mentioned questions. What kind of questions do you normally get about elections?
Well, there are the questions from the candidates and questions from the voters. Candidates tend to call a lot with questions about sort of what they can and cannot do, a lot of questions about their financials, how to handle things to make sure that they do it all appropriately and file their reports on time. For the most part, our law isn't terribly specific about how they can spend the money that's donated. It's more focused on that it is all reported in the interest of transparency. So the voters, make the decision on whether they feel their expenditures are appropriate. So all of that is posted on our website. It's a good thing for voters to know if they want to look at any of that. So candidates call a lot about that sort of thing. Pretty much what the rules allow and don't allow. And then voters will often call and ask about polling locations, polling hours, absentee procedures. We do have in the city a sort of no fault sort of the term absentee process. For some people, if they are not going to be available, or some people that commute, they're concerned they wouldn't, make it back to Frederick in time, they can go ahead and do an absentee ballot ahead of time. If you prefer not to go to your polling place, you don't have to in order to vote. You just have to request an absentee ballot. ahead of time, and you could do that. And to do that, you would contact actually the Frederick County Board of Elections. They are helping us with processing all those absentee ballots this year. So you would contact them. You can call them at 301-600-VOTE or 8683. And they will send you an application, and you fill out the application, return it to them, and then they send you a ballot, which you fill out. You fill out your ballot just like you would on election day. Just fill in the oval, put it in the envelope that comes with the absentee ballot, which has an oath on the back to sign. It has to be sealed, and the oath has to be signed for the ballot to be counted.
Good to know. Talking about polling places, there were some changes this year in that, wasn't there?
There were. We made a few changes to the precinct map. So some people's precincts have changed. One precinct, the number changed, but that's the only thing that changed because of the other, tweaking the map a little bit. We did some renumbering. Anyone whose precinct or polling place has changed should have received a voter notification card in the mail, letting them know that. But now we have the precinct 6, which is sort of the Walnut Ridge, Whittier, Old Farm area generally, has expanded somewhat. We've moved that line a little bit, and they have a new polling place. They will now vote at Grace Community Christian Church, which is at 2100 Rosemont Avenue. That's a new polling place for us this year that we did not utilize in 2013. So in the past, those folks had to travel a little further, but this is sort of right in their neighborhood.
For voters, what is the registration deadline in order to participate in the primary and the election?
The registration deadline is 30 days prior to the voting. So it's August 11th for the primary and October 6th for the general. And then now if you don't register in time for the primary, you can still register for the general after that.
You mentioned the website. That's the www.cityoffrederick.com.
Yes.
And people will find
Yes. You
more
can click
information
on 2017 elections and everything is there. You can also get an absentee ballot there. You can see the list of candidates as well as the polling places. You can, if you're not sure what your polling place is, there will be a tool on there before Election Day where you can type in your address and it will let you know where you need to go to vote.
So as you can see, the city, it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. A lot of things go into it, but the goal is to make it as easy for the voters to get to because it's a very important part of government process. And we encourage everybody to get out there and vote. And this is a good opportunity for the citizens to be aware that it's not an easy process to get to the point where you just go and fill in a little circle.
Right.
So we appreciate you taking your time to explain all this stuff. And for all of you out there in TV land, Phyllis does a great job with answering your questions and keeping us going in the right direction in reference to the voting process. So thank you for all your hard work.
Certainly.